Hi everyone, and welcome to Creative Chelsey. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my third alternative project using the March 2022 paper pumpkin kit called Beyond the Horizon. This beautiful kit creates 9 cards. You're going to have enough supplies to make 3 of each of these original designs. And what I like to do is take the contents of those kits and create my own projects. And if you'd like to watch me unbox the kit or see any of my other alternative projects made with this kit, you can click on the playlist and I'll link it up here in the top right corner. If you are new to my channel and want to see more of my videos, click on the subscribe button and then the bell for notifications. I would love to be your Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and help you with any of your paper crafting needs. To purchase any of the products you see me use today, or to get your own paper pumpkin subscription, please visit the links and they are listed below in the description. So today we are focusing on using the envelopes that came in the kit. They are printed on both sides and we're going to go ahead and open them up and use these to create these beautiful cards. So like I just mentioned, we're going to go ahead and open up the envelope so that we can use that double-sided pattern paper. I'm going to begin by removing the bottom, and I just cut a very small piece off, and that opens the bottom up, and then I go do the exact same thing on each side. And this is going to give you 2 pieces. The first piece is the back piece, and this is not double printed, but you do have this nice large area that you can use on any of your projects. However, today we're going to be using the double-sided printed area. So to cut the envelopes, you're going to need to do things just a little differently for both of the cards. So we're going to start with this one. You can see here that there are 4 different patterns on the card, which means you're going to need 2 different envelopes. And then from there, you're going to cut the envelopes down to 4 inches by 5 1/4. So once you've cut it down to 4 inches by 5 1/4, you're going to cut that in half again. So just imagine that this is a full 4 inch by 5 1/4 piece. And you're going to cut it at 2 inches and 5/8, which is half of 5 1/4. So then you'll have 2 pieces, and you're going to go ahead and put one of those pieces off to the side, and you're going to use the one of each pattern, just like I have here. So each card only needs 1 piece from each pattern that is 2 5/8 inches by 4 inches. So you'll be able to create 2 cards from 2 envelopes. And then from there, you're going to cut it to 2 inches. So the 4 inch gets cut into half at 2 inches. And so that's how you're going to get both of those patterns. And I think I'm going to use this side here because it's got a little bit more yellow. And so then you can flip one over and put those back together, and you're going to get that 4 inch across like we need for the card. So I'm going to do the same thing here. So this piece is 2 5/8 by 4 inches. And I'm going to cut it in half at 2 inches. So then it's going to be 2 5/8 by 2 inches. And then again, I'm going to flip one over, and so that I can see the other pattern on that side. Okay, so those are ready for this 4 pattern card here. You could do this with any pattern paper, and designer series paper is really great for it because it is also double-sided. So let's go ahead and cut our paper for this card. And you can notice here that I have a little bit of a smaller border around the card. And so I've cut the envelope to 4 1/8 inches by 5 3/8 inches. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to start with that shorter side and then rotate to 5 3/8. Then I'm going to remove a piece that is 3/4 of an inch from the bottom. So then one side is going to show that pale papaya watercolor, and then we'll add the other pattern at the bottom, just like that. So the next step is to stamp on some of these patterns. So if you look at the patterns here and back to my original card, you'll notice that I added some extra texture to the Old Olive watercolor side. And then I also added a greeting to the Bumblebee yellow side. So right now we're just going to do the Old Olive. This particular piece does not have a ton of color to it. So you could probably pull from one of the other scrap pieces that you might have on hand from cutting your envelope. And then that would give you some more pattern so that you can create more cards. I'm going to go ahead and just stamp on this and we'll see how it looks. So to do this, I am using Old Olive ink because I want it to coordinate. And I'm going to use this little 3-circle image. And I'm just going to randomly stamp this all over this piece. So you'll get something like this, which looks a little better with some of these other patterns since they're a little more busy. And then we'll stamp our greeting on this one after it's on our card so that it's nice and straight. For our Pale Papaya flower card, I'm going to do some extra texture back here along the left and bottom edge. And I'm going to use the large floral stamp. Now I forgot to mention that I am using the second stamp set that came in the Paper Pumpkin kit. Now the March 2022 kit was unique because it actually came with 2 stamp sets. Normally the kits only come with 1. And I think it's because they were celebrating their anniversary / birthday. And so this second stamp set kind of is their thank you for subscribing. So we're going to be using these 2 large floral images. It's a 2-step, which means you stamp one over the other. And I'll show you how I like to do this with this image. So I'm going to use Pale Papaya, which is that same color envelope, and I'm going to begin with the detailed image, which is the lines. And I'm just going to start by adding it in the corner, and then you can kind of rotate it to get some different shapes along the bottom and left side. Okay, so once I've stamped the detail, then I am going to stamp the more solid image on top. And I'm going to actually stamp off just slightly and then stamp over. And that's going to give me a lighter color so that I can see through the stamped image and see that detail. And it doesn't have to be a totally solid image because we're using it on this watercolor paper, so it's kind of nice to have it be just, you know, a little variated, just like the paper is. So I'm having a little bit of a hard time seeing it, so I'm just going to go ahead and stamp it directly over. We'll see how that looks. Yeah, I can see that a little better. And this is just a background texture, so it doesn't need to be perfect. You can kind of play around with it until you get the look that you want. They can also overlap just a little bit. So there we go. So that looks nice. You can see that texture and how it just adds another layer of detail to your card. So while we have our stamps out, let's go ahead and stamp our flowers for our cards. so I've got some scratch paper, and this is just basic white scratch paper. And we're going to do 3 different color combinations for our cards. The first one is Calypso Coral. I'm going to begin again with that detailed image, and I'm going to stamp that first. Then I'm going to pull in my more solid image, and I'm going to stamp that off. And then I'll stamp over this one. And that's, again, going to give me that lighter color. So we're now going to repeat that same process in 2 other colors. And I have cleaned my stamps. I'm going to do the first one in Bumblebee. So same thing, begin with the detailed image. Full strength ink. And then the solid image, you want to stamp off and then line up. And then stamp on. And then the third color I'm going to use is Misty Moonlight. And then just the exact same process here. Solid detail. And I did clean the stamps again. And then stamp off. And then stamp on. It's a little bit of a tight fit, but they all fit on that piece. So this was just a scrap piece. You can use any scrap pieces of basic white cardstock for this. So for this card, for the leaves, I used the last of the die cuts, and it was the green branch, and I cut it up into sections for the leaves. And then for this card, I used one of the stamps. So I'm going to stamp that in some of these open areas. And I wanted a darker green so that it would stand out against the old olive. So I'm using Evening Evergreen, but it's a little darker than I want. So I am going to stamp off first and then stamp on. And I want 3. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I also noticed that I'm using 3 of the smaller flowers for that card, and I only have 2. So I need to stamp a 3rd flower using those images. I'm just going to use this single flower here. This one is Bumblebee. So again, just ink up that one single flower. If you get a little bit on some of the other flowers, that's okay. Okay. All right, so now I have everything I need for my cards. I'm going to go ahead and fussy cut these out, and I'll be right back. All right, so I've gone ahead and fussy cut those out. I did want to mention, and you may notice here, that I did cut the 2 flowers apart. And I'll just kind of walk you through how I did that. So you just focus on the small flower, cutting out that smaller flower. And then when we put them all together on the card, we can layer them so that you don't see this opening. And I'll show you how to do that. And the reason I'm doing this is so that we can get some more height from the flowers and make it feel a little more realistic that they are being layered on top of one another. Okay, so you'll get a large flower with a chunk taken out, and then a perfectly small flower, and then we'll layer those over one another. And then the other thing that I did is I'm curling the edges of the flowers, and I'm curling them up. Okay. I also noticed that I did not stamp inside the center of my two larger flowers. We're actually not using the large yellow one, so I can put that off to the side. And I'm going to just stamp the blue one with a little bit of yellow so that it all coordinates together. So we'll do the same thing we did before, where we'll stamp the solid color first, and we'll stamp that off, and then stamp that in the center, and then that detailed image can get stamped with the solid full ink so that you can get that nice detail in there. All right, so now all of our elements are ready and we can start putting our cards together. So for this first one, I'm going to use the pale papaya. That's going to go down first. And I'm using a card base of thick basic white cardstock. Just want to make sure you have a nice thin border all the way around. And that the flowers go on the left and the right side. Then we'll take that opposite pattern and add that to the bottom. Now we have this seam, and sometimes I like to cover those up, and I thought it would be nice to have a little touch of Calypso Coral since that's the color that we're using. And so this one's a little bit on the smaller side. I could still use it if I wanted to, but I really liked this piece here, which is the piece in between the die cuts. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that out. You could also use some of the edge pieces here too if you wanted. And then I'm going to take my paper trimmer and I'm going to trim it down to the right size, which is 4 1/8. So just kind of eyeball that. Just trimming off just a very small amount so that it matches the edges right there. And then you can take a little bit of liquid glue and just place that over that seam, like so. Just adds that little extra touch of color to the card. So here is that leaf branch die cut, and we're going to cut it into sections. And so there are 6 different sections, I think, that I got from it. I'm going to turn it upside down and then just trim these groupings of 2 from the larger branch. And you can get really detailed down in there, but I noticed that I wasn't really seeing this centered point when I was adding them to my cards. And so if you want to make it nice and smooth, you can, or you can just leave it a little bit rough. So since you have 6, you can make 2 cards with 1 branch. I'm going to add them, 3 of them on my card here. And for this, I'm going to use the glue dots from the kit. I also just noticed that I never stamped the detail in these flowers on my pale papaya piece. So I'm going to grab that pale papaya and my scratch paper again. Just going to stamp a little bit off, stamp off, and then stamp that light color in the center, and then do the detail in full strength. For this one, I don't want to get it on the card base, so I'm just going to move it over a little bit, and that's just going to give it a little bit more interest right there. Sorry about that. Okay, so back to our flower. So I'm just going to go ahead and add this. Let's rotate it just a little bit so it's not exactly the same shape as that one down there. And then we'll add our flowers on top. Now when you're trying to cover up this opening, I have a little tip. So the flower that's by itself is actually larger than the flower petals from this one. So if you were to try and just match that up, you're going to possibly see some of those openings. So swap the two flowers, and then that covers up that opening just a little better. So you just need to rotate it until you can find two petals that cover that up really nicely. So I'll just do it right there like that. And then this one's going to come down like that. So they're a little bit, again, in that shape right there. So now I'm going to add my leaves, and you can just tuck those in wherever you want them. I like that little 3 leaf up here by itself, and then I'll add 2 leaves down here. Maybe one to the big one. Tuck it under that big one there too. Okay, so wherever you want to place those. So for card number 2, we're going to add our pattern paper so that they all touch in the center, and there's going to be about 1/8 of an inch border all the way around. So you can lay the patterns onto the card base in any area that you want. I really like having this fun pattern in the top left. So just eyeball a nice border there. And then I'm going to add the yellow right next to it. Make sure they kind of meet up in the center. Then I've got the green. You'll notice that I added the color so that it's on the outside edge. I'm going to do the same here with the green one. And if you need to overlap the papers at all because maybe you've made the border a little too big, you can do that. That's an easy fix. And then the blue one down here in the bottom right corner. Okay, something like this. So then we're going to add the flowers in a very similar way. This opening I'm going to put down on the right side. So this also has dimensionals on it. And I am going to cover up that opening with one of the larger flowers, just like I did before. And so then I've got another large one over here on this side, and I kind of want it to be on top of that petal, just like that. And then this one I actually am using a glue dot for so that it is a little lower, and I can just tuck it in underneath, just like that. Then I'm going to take the leaves and tuck them. If I need to lift up any of those adhesives, I can as well. Just kind of tuck those underneath that. And I'm going to tuck them underneath the small flowers. This one I probably will just pull right up and add that leaf. Let's have it go this way, I think. And then place that flower back on there. There we go. Okay, so really easy. You can see that I covered up that connection between all 4 patterns right there in the center. So next we're going to stamp our greetings. And for this first card, I wanted to use a nice big greeting, and the word celebrate is in that stamp set. And I'm using Evening Evergreen, so it's nice and dark and stands out. Make sure that when you're stamping this, you don't have ink on your block so that you don't accidentally transfer any ink to your other pieces of your card. And then I'm just stamping that above the flowers, kind of in that opening where we didn't do any stamping. Then for this one, I wanted something that would fit inside that area. And so I'm using the Sending You Birthday Wishes. Just ink that up again. Make sure that you don't have any ink on your clear block. And then you do want to make sure that it's nice and straight on your card. And then just stamp it above those flowers, just like the other one. And then if you have any of the iridescent rhinestones left over from the kit, you can add these, and you can do them in the center of the flowers, or you can do them around the flowers. I'm just going to add 3 around the flowers for this card. And then on this one, do the same. Just like that. So I do want to share with you how the other envelopes look in this first design. So here is the Bumblebee envelope. So you've got the Bumblebee watercolor wash and then that fun pattern. I also used one of the strips, die cut strips from the kit, and then the rest of the branch leaves for that card. So that turned out really cute. And then same thing with the old olive. Again, some different color combinations. I did use the stamped leaves instead of the old olive. And the main reason for that is because these are old olive and this is old olive, and so it kind of would blend. So I stamped it in evening evergreen so that it would stand out. And again, another one of those fun die cut strips just to kind of blend those two patterns together and add some more color. So really fun cards, and I hope you enjoyed watching me create these fun alternative cards using the envelopes from the March 2022 Paper Pumpkin Kit. If you're interested in subscribing to Paper Pumpkin so that you can get your own fun monthly crafting kit, please use the link in the description box below to subscribe. If you'd like to get written instructions or see close-up images of these cards, you can visit my blog, creativechelsey.com. Thanks so much for watching. Have a creative day. Bye.